Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. And let's talk about a really weird recent phenomenon in some music discourse circles, mostly centered around this new generation of music commentators and promoters on platforms like Twitter and the like, who operate pretty much anonymously and have also recently been outed in a string of posts revealing the country of origin that some of these accounts hail from, which has called into question the sincerity and authenticity of a lot of these account owners. Like, who are these people and are they who they passively portray themselves to be? Are they pretending to be someone that they're not as a means of gaining some kind of cultural clout? Or avoid accountability for what they do and say behind a veil of anonymity? Recently, I read a great post on this very topic from Mimi, the music blogger. Who she is in the name. She hails from the UK and has been a music journalist and tastemaker for years now. And again, I brought her on to talk about this very topic because I think she could speak to some points of it better than me. All right, guys, as I said, right here we have Mimi, the music blogger, with us. And again, really the impetus for me kind of reaching out and having this conversation with you and not just talking about this topic myself was that you put together this great post on Instagram, on your Substack, talking about this exact issue. This has been kind of like an ongoing trend, as I've said, in music commentary and review circles for a while. What was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back that made you finally like really open up and kind of, build a whole post about this and really kind of dive into the issue?
So basically, I've done like a Substack about fake mink, let's say a month ago.
Right.
And funny enough, so Esther Kid is some new rapper. He's hot right now. And I was like, okay, it's happening again, guys. Like, we know what's going to happen next. And a UK underground blog page just pushed a certain narrative like, Mimi's at it again, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, huh? But I didn't really look into it. Then I see a lot of like people from the scene was like, nah, there's a problem. Like there's a narrative being pushed. Everyone's talking about it. And I'm like, okay, I see a pattern, what's going on. I'm seeing what's
Hmm.
going on in X. And there's a pattern when it's like a page growing that's talking about the culture nonstop, but we don't know what they actually look like. So where is the source really coming from? And can we really rely on them? That's the question. So from then, I just start writing how I feel.
Hmm. And what do you think about sort of, having a music brand, having a commentary brand, and running it anonymously? Like, what do you think, the potential drawbacks and downsides are of that? Why is that, in your mind, like a less legitimate way of going about commentating on not just hip hop, but any music or music culture, across the board, as opposed to, doing what you or I are doing and sort of like, putting our face and putting our personality on it?
When we put ourselves out there, we're kind of like owning our stuff. We're standing on business. We're taking accountability. You can agree with it. You can disagree with it. But when you're anonymous, it's like you're not taking full accountability to what you're actually saying. And it's like a character. It's like you're putting a costume on and you can just do what you want to do. And there's a rise of people pushing certain narrative and it's coming from a dark place, but it's not obvious that it's them. Recently, I saw one of like a music page on X that was about the whole Kendrick and Drake situation, but the person even said the N-word, for
Hmm.
example, but it's not a person of what color at all. It's like things like that, you're pushing the limits whilst not taking real accountability and just taking the piss.
Right. And to sort of like be blunt about it, sort of like saying it in a way that isn't necessarily intended to sort of be insulting, saying it in a way to sort of like mask who they are and sort of like, basically play into this facade, pretending to be someone that they're not, you're saying.
Yes, and the rise of like rage baiting as well. We're seeing a
Hmm.
lot of agenda being pushed just to make everyone upset. It can be like the music lovers be thinking like, why are you saying this statement? Where is this coming from? To like a casual music lover can be like, wait, what? The next, everyone's just debating, arguing, whilst the person is just taking the benefit because it's going to be paid by the end of the month.
Hmm.
It's just things
Yeah.
like that.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. Let's start first with, I mean, maybe like the accountability element of it there, which I mean, I also have an opinion on. I mean, I think it's pretty clear. It should be pretty obvious to anybody watching this that, like, if you're out there and you're putting your name and you're putting your face to the things that you say on a regular basis, you're probably going to maybe not move inauthentically. You're going to move in a way to where you actually think about the things that you say, and you put care and you put thought and you put effort into the messages that you're putting out there. And in a world where people in the music space are operating on such a level that is faceless a lot of the time, there's not so much concern about, like, well, whether or not anything I say has any kind of like negative impact or downside or hurts anybody, or, is maybe even false in terms of, like, the legitimacy of what I'm saying, because it's not going to come back and, hurt me in any way. There's no real blowback outside of, maybe people will sort of trust my brand and Twitter account less. But the thing is, these people can overnight change their names, change their avatars, change whatever, the moment that there's any kind of like major fallout or, reckoning behind anything that they're saying. So, it sort of allows people to kind of like run away from the things that they say, or, behind the scenes kind of like benefit off of stuff that they may not even actually wholeheartedly think and feel. They're just kind of saying it because they know that controversy and polarizing opinions tend to monetize very well online and in spaces like Twitter and so on and so forth.
Yeah, you just said that perfectly. Literally, I have nothing to add with that. You said it to T. Because for me personally, it's like I get my opinions gets cooked sometimes, or people agree with it, and I just
and me too, obviously.
you know what I mean? Like people thinking, why do you say that? Oh, what do you mean this is shit? Or what? I'm just like, this is my ears, this is my experience, this is how I take it or leave it. While somebody else wants to have the benefit of having quote unquote a name or a platform, but doesn't really want to take the accountability side of it, which takes things downplay and a lot of things, even behind the scenes in the UK sides, there's a rise of a lot of UK underground rap platforms who are people outside of the culture are benefiting from it and taking advantage of this upcoming artist. Like I heard a story recently that one blog page is charging people 1K, upcoming artists. But because they build a platform, they feel like they can do that. And it's not right.
Yeah, that's another thing that really kind of needs to get brought up here. Just kind of like the behind the scenes payment aspect behind a lot of this. And this is something that I've talked about just in the music influencer space in general, even when it comes to people who we know and we see their faces and so on and so forth. But still, at the end of the day, if that's the way that they operate and that comes out and that becomes clear, still, as long as they're putting their face to it, you at least know, well, that kind of person does this kind of coverage for that sort of money. And you can decide from there whether or not you are going to continue to follow them, care about what they say, trust them. If they're operating anonymously all the time, then, again, it just offers an opportunity for less accountability. As music fans, assuming anybody who's running these anonymous accounts are actual, like, genuinely music fans, like, one of the main issues for me, and should be an issue for everybody across the music industry, no matter where you are, is the lack of transparency these days we see with everything behind streams, behind promotion, behind the way the artists push their work. Like, there's so little transparency around how any of it works. The thing is, like, you see artists who are, I'm sure you've had experiences where you've covered something that seems like it has a lot of buzz online, but then you engage with it or you comment on it or you do something, and then there's like almost little to no response. And it's like, wow, it almost seems like, all of these discussions or discourse that I saw that I caught around this was almost like astroturfed to sort of make people think that there's more interest in this than there actually is. And, as music fans, you shouldn't want to further contribute to that, by operating completely anonymously and not allowing people to know who you are when you're saying what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. So sorry, I'm in my head thinking you're just eating it up, but like I'm watching it online.
I'd like to know because this is something I think that, you could probably speak to better than me. Yeah. I think that there's probably a lot of people whether they're, because again, we've been seeing a lot of information coming out about, oh, this Twitter account is from this country that has nothing to do with, the scene that they're commenting on a regular basis, or this person specifically in, regards to like the hip hop dynamic, they may be commenting on hip hop on a regular basis and they're white, or whatever. And there may be a lot of people who, feel like, well, I really love this music. I really care about it. I want to commentate on it. I have opinions that I feel like are valid, but I'm afraid once people know that I'm white, they're not going to take me seriously and they're not going to care about what I have to say, or they're going to delegitimize my opinions. And again, I would love for you to expound upon this beyond me, but I could say from my own personal experience covering genres like this while being a white guy and people know that I'm white and they see that I'm white, there are going to be people that may legitimately take you less seriously because of that, because they don't see you as a part of the in-group. But the thing is, like, you should offer them the ability to make that decision for themselves. Not everybody is going to agree with you for a variety of different reasons. Not everybody's going to like you. And you shouldn't be afraid of not getting on with everybody just merely on an opinion level, just because of who you are and where you're from. And, the thing is, at the end of the day, I feel like you should have to want to do good work, challenge yourself, and put out opinions out there that are thoughtful and are, well-reasoned, so that, and I know there are a lot of people who have done this who come from different walks of life than me. They see my content and they're like, who's this guy talking about this, But then they see what I have to say and they're like, oh, well, he actually has like some legitimate takes. Like, you should have to want to put in the work to convince people who may see you, instantaneously and think one thing, but then maybe have their minds change. Give them the opportunity to change your minds, and give them the opportunity to change their minds, and give yourself the opportunity to actually see that your opinions are legitimate enough to where you can sway people who might look at you in a way that's like kind of cynical, or, maybe not trust you instantly. How do you know whether or not your opinions will really float if you don't have to trick people into agreeing with them?
I feel like it's the pattern of social media. Everyone's creating a facade. A lot of people want to be someone that they're not really are.
Right.
And it's like a lot of that's happening, especially they're getting younger. So this is the norm. I'm 28, so I had the experience of transitioning into the internet world and knowing what life is without the internet. Whilst a lot of people, social media has always been there. So in their head, they constantly have to create a facade and they have to play a character. I'm from the UK, but I love hip hop. I study it. I watch every single documentary. I'm a fan of it. But I make it known that, guys, yes, I'm black, but I am British. So there's always to let them know, like, there's people from the outside as well. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So when people purposely go out their way and create a platform, knowing that it's going to create a facade for people, and in a way, not being transparent about it, you kind of know what you're doing and you know why you're doing it. And so that's the problem, in my opinion.
You highlight something there that is a really excellent point that I feel like a lot of, and again, I'll just say, like, white people don't understand when they're looking at black people as a monolith from the outside, because they sort of see blackness as like this one singular, unbroken entity that there's no divisions in, there's no disagreement in, there's no sort of like people not seeing eye to eye. They just sort of see that, well, once you're black, you're sort of in the club. When in fact, you could be a black person just as black as anybody else, but from the UK, and you're going to have American hip hop fans who are like, I'm going to take her opinion less seriously because she's not even from America. And the thing is, like, your average white music commentator is not going to realize that. They're just going to think that, like, well, I have this whiteness working against me potentially once people know that I'm white online, when they don't understand that, like, there are all sorts of black music content creators who have all sorts of biases working against them, even within the black community. And that doesn't dawn on them. They're only worried about how their whiteness will make them portrayed, and are worried about sort of like trying to combat that and coming across as like kind of inauthentic to kind of overcome it.
Yeah. Yep. 10 out of 10. I agree. You said it. Yep. Literally. Because being the Black British experience is totally different to the Black experience in America. Like, we have genres like grime, UK drill. A lot of Black Americans tend to understand it, but don't get it. For example, when Skepta was giving his rant about it, people from the UK were like, we understand what he's trying to say about, like, he's talking about MCs. He's not talking about a rapper. He's talking about a grime MC. And it's like, things like that is like, okay, this is two different cultures. It's two different experiences.
Right.
But
There's different rubrics by which people are judging
exactly,
the quality of each thing.
exactly. So I feel like to be transparent and authentic and actually being a real storyteller, you tell your truth and everyone else can tell their truth and it kind of create like a conclusion of what's really going on. So hiding and lying about it is like, okay, what story are we trying to document right now?
I also want to point out that in your post, you do highlight some content creators and commentators who do make themselves known and they put themselves out there and they put their names and they put their face to what they do. But you also sort of like see them as kind of questionable or you don't agree with a lot of what they do. But
Yeah.
they're still at the very least like putting their face to it at the end of the day,
Yeah.
you know, and you can still at least like appreciate that. You know, to what do you say like the argument that like, does this really matter because people can basically put themselves out there and still move really inauthentically anyway, and people will eat it up? I mean, over the past year, I've seen, for example, like people who I know for months have been talking quite regularly about like the Drake UMG lawsuit. And then once the decision came down in the way that it did, you know, I've seen people saying like, oh, actually, like, after again talking about this for such a long time, I didn't even know it was a defamation suit. I thought it was about bots. And it's like, you've been talking about this for months. Like, you know, and your name is on this, your face is like, you know, you couldn't shock that information out of me.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, by that same token, I'm so scared of, you know, being that like uninformed about a topic that I'm talking about and getting so many views on that I wouldn't have actually looked into it, you know, and show my fans me looking into it when I'm doing a video about it. But you know, still, you do have a lot of people out here who continue to champion stuff they don't really care about because they know it'll get views, will either lie nefariously or out of ignorance, even though people know who they are. Like, does any of this really matter with those phenomenon still going on, with anonymity not being a factor?
Oh, that's a very good point. Yeah, but you know what? I don't agree for someone like Chuck Ross. I don't agree with his platform at all, in my opinion.
Hmm.
But I respect that he put himself out there and still stands on what he says and says it with his face out there. Whilst a lot of people can hide behind the camera, behind the computer, behind the phone, and push what they want to push and have no consequences. That there should be consequences of people's actions, especially if it's about talking, spreading information. Spreading information, you have to take ownership on what you say because it's a type of accountability and it's a yeah, that's the best way I can describe it. Yeah.
Hmm. I mean, are there any sort of like other ongoing trends in regards to kind of, you know, music commentary and music content creation that you're seeing out there that are concerning you at the moment? Maybe even in regards to like what AI is shaping up to be with it, you know, how it could have an impact on this. I mean, not to kind of just expound further, but all the anonymity also makes me wonder if we're headed toward a space where, because we already know some of these people behind the scenes are being paid by labels and PRs to sort of push certain things and promote certain things and
Hmm.
you know, make certain things look more hype than they actually are. I
Hmm.
mean, what's to stop them from getting to a point where the PR and the labels are essentially just saying, why don't we just cut out the middleman and just start or buy our own already previously successful Twitter account off some rando and
Yeah.
just start running it like it's an authentic Twitter account and save ourselves some money by
Yeah.
just running the account or having it just post AI style like it's
Yeah.
some kind of genuine Twitter stan.
Oh my gosh, I never really thought of that because that can be a big red flag if that's the way we're heading with a lot of things, especially with a lot of quote unquote bots. Like, let's say you say a
Right.
certain name and you just trigger something on X and you get tons of comments and tweets coming at you randomly, not even making sense half the time. I feel like we're already heading in that direction anyways, but it's more of the quantity. I feel like it's more about lots of accounts rather than a big account with lots of followers, rather than it's like a lot of accounts that has like 100K here or 10 followers. It's like a different range of things. So Yeah, I'm scared of that. I'm scared of AI overall. I think what's going on is really, really scary. And even the way a lot of journalists, um, well, how they want to write. It's like a lot of people accuse them of using AI. I was thinking, why? I've been writing before AI. I've been writing before ChatGPT. There was life before that. But because the lines are getting blurred so much, we don't know what's real anymore. And I feel like it's going to get to a point that we're going to question everything.
Yeah, I think it is kind of like getting to that point. There is, unfortunately, like, I think as a result of that, as a result of maybe the quality of certain things kind of falling into the toilet because of the way that the algorithms like favor certain types of content. There really is like kind of a cynicism and a nihilism that I see people kind of like having in reaction to almost everything, because I think a lot of people are just like burnt out. And I think the result of a lot of what we've just been talking about is that a lot of the music discourse well has been poisoned,
Yeah.
and people are kind of like struggling for good quality places to have actual like music discourse and engage in this stuff in a way that like feels collective and feels culturally significant and feels like you're actually kind of like contributing to something that's greater than yourself. And I think a lot of that has been kind of broken. I think a lot of that's been bought out. I think a lot of that has been subverted, by people who, and they do it because it works, like pay for the bots. They, grease the wheels behind the scenes
Yeah.
by paying certain influencers to make music fans think that certain things are bigger or more significant than they are. And again, it works. Like you say, you talk about a certain artist, you say a certain thing, and before you know it, like you've got 12 random people on your ass, like all like destroying you all at once. But the thing is, if you do it enough times, you sort of notice that it's the same handful of people like
Same.
over and over and over and over and over. But for your average person who doesn't do or talk about this stuff on a regular basis and is maybe just like, a Twitter random or whatever, like, what might be another Tuesday for you and me is like a moment that they never lived down in their heads. Like, oh man, I better not talk about so-and-so that time
Yeah.
that I got my ass kicked on Twitter or
Yeah.
whatever, I got ratioed and whatnot. But the thing is, like, that's just the same 12 loud, annoying motherfuckers that are just tweeting about that person every day, either because they have something wrong
Engagement.
in their head or they're paid to, you
Yep.
know? And again, it works. It's enough to trick some people into thinking that so-and-so X, Y, or Z artist may be a bigger deal than they actually are because they have like a few shooters online, like willing to, go to bat for them at any time of day.
Do you feel like we're in a way we're living the same type of story, but just in different fonts? When I mean about that, like before AI, was it like the internet was like a big thing, like it was kind of scary. Before the internet, it was like magazines pushing their own agenda and or their own narratives. Then before that, it was like radio. Like we're living it in different forms. Is it just another thing that we're just gonna overcome again?
I think, I've said this before and I'll say this again. Like, I've likened the place that we are at currently right now, as far as like the music industry and music consumption, to being a lot like uh, the last years of like traditional media in the way that we once knew it, having the
Mm.
stranglehold in the US that it did in the 2000s. I'm talking like, radio monopolies and the
Yep.
same 20 songs being played
Yep.
over and over and over the course of an hour, like all day, every day,
Yep.
until the label approved another one to sort of get slipped in there. Like, streaming has become the new gatekeepers, and
Yep.
the algorithms are getting narrower and they're getting tighter in terms of what they're exposing people to. And people are getting, holed up in these silos of content to where they literally think the stuff that they're being exposed to is like the whole world. And they
Mhm.
don't sort of like see the forest for the trees, or don't understand how wide the world of maybe perspectives and music and art and culture that they could be getting access to is like beyond that. I see a lot of people, because they're interested in the topic, respond to a lot of the content that I do when I talk about AI, and also talk about like Spotify, and the various issues with their business model. And it's important. I talk about news stories and topics when they come up on these fronts because I feel like that's what a journalist does. You know, they
Yeah.
talk about stories as they're developing. But I do get a lot of responses where people are just like, why are you still talking about this? You know, you talk about this every time, you bring this up every time. And, you know, the thing is, because you're interested in that content and you've looked at it before, it's going to show it to you again, even if maybe you feel like you're up to date on the story. Meanwhile, I also get a lot of comments on the back end of people being like, even though I've talked about this maybe 30 times before, people being like, wow, this is the first time I've heard about this.
Yeah.
You know, it's especially in the last couple of days because a lot of my Spotify content is making it into people's algorithms because the Wrapped is out. So a lot of people are talking about Spotify in general because of the Wrapped, and that's bringing a little bit more exposure to some of my other Spotify videos. And that's creating a situation where people who were not looking up or looking into anything having to do with Spotify previously and just kind of passively using it without thinking about it are now being exposed to information about the, you know, AI tech military investments, about all sorts of other stuff that's wrong with the company. And they're hearing about this stuff for the first time, you know? So unfortunately, like what I feel like a lot of people don't realize is like, there's no monoculture on the internet. And not everybody is being exposed to the same information as significant and as big as it is. Spotify is a corporation that touches most music fans' lives at this point.
Yeah.
And yet there's still a lot of information about the company that most music fans don't know. They don't know. They're not being exposed to the news stories. They're not being exposed to the information. For a channel as big as mine, where I've talked about this stuff as many times as I have, to still have people out there saying like, wow, this is the first I'm hearing about this. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. I always tell myself, like, when it comes to like the internet, it can be like a lot of numbers seeing the views, but not a lot of people can see it at the same time because everyone has different algorithm, because everyone's algorithm is to their personal take. And
Right.
what's really scary for me right now, everything's very data based. Nothing's about feeling anymore and what's really going on. So when it's all about data, it's trying to make things very black and white when the world's actually a colorful place.
No, that's fair. And it also makes it more difficult to expose people to ideas and songs and artists that there isn't already a buzz around or maybe some controversy around, you know, because I review artists on a regular basis that have little to no following. And, you know, it can be really tough kind of getting their names and getting their music in front of people's ears and eyes, unless there's already kind of like a bit of a pre-established buzz there.
I don't know if you remembered, but I always remember for me discovering an artist when the world doesn't really know them. I feel like, oh my God,
Right.
this is great. I feel like I've got something here. But now it's like everybody wants to flock to the main person or the main star so they can feel welcomed or like feel like it's normal. I don't
Right. People want to be involved in something that there's already like some momentum behind.
Yeah. To feel like they're on job when really and truly it's like that's not what music is really about. It's about how you feel.
Which, and I don't know how we break that or if that's just a tide that eventually changes, but I do feel like culturally we do kind of like pendulum swing between eras where people are maybe more like a little more curious about stuff that's not being shoved down their throats, and time periods where people are just like, I just want to be handed something that I'm being told is good is good, and just sort of like accept it to have a collective experience with everyone. And I think we're kind of in that era. I think we're in that time period right now where people are more like ready to accept like what they're already being told is like good and worth their time, and just kind of like unquestionably consume it without sort of like looking beyond, you know, what's being handed to them.
I agree. I agree. I feel like we're reaching that point. I feel like in a way we're separating casual listeners with music lovers right now. And I feel like a lot of music lovers don't really want to engage with casual discourse because it gets frustrating and it's all about, oh, you think you know music better more than me, than all of that stuff, when being truly is just everyone has different ways of how they take things.
Mimi, I appreciate you coming on here and talking to me about this and taking the time. There we have it. There's the conversation. Thank you once again to Mimi. You can find her Instagram page, her Substack, and everything down below in the description box. And I appreciate you guys watching and considering the significance of this topic, maybe as niche as it is. But let me know in the comments if you have any strong thoughts on this or any maybe odd interactions you've had with, I don't know, some fake music Twitter accounts, bots, and the like. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, anonymity forever.